Alright, now we want to take a few minutes to talk about race relations in the colonial period of Latin American history. Race is important. We, if you're listening to this, are probably here in the United States, and we have a very vague understanding of race. We say, well, we're going to put you into these big buckets, right? We're going to label these buckets black, white, maybe a couple other colors, not very many. So, for example, in the 19th century, there was a very important event in the history of the United States called Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy was 1/9 black, so he was not allowed to ride a train, a segregated train car. Wait a second, but he's only 1/9 black. But that is considered black because we have the one-drop policy. So let's talk about race, how it's different in Latin America than it is in the United States. Race here, and that is on top of the list, is going to be the Peninsulares. If you're from the peninsula, you come to the Americas, you are better than everybody else. You're probably white or lighter skinned, you're born in the old world. And it is believed that you, and to you alone, belong all the high jobs. The archbishopric, the audiencia presidents, the viceroyalties, you because you're a peninsulare. If the mom and the dad from Spain have a baby in the Americas, that baby is going to be a Creole born in the Americas. And it's believed that as a result of the altitude and the nature of where they were born, they're just not as good as Peninsulares, a second-class citizen. So on top you got the Peninsulares, underneath you have the Creoles. A Peninsulare or a Creole, when they come to the Americas, they discovered many Indians. The Indians, of course, are farther down the racial social scale, the hierarchy there. If a Peninsulare or a Creole mixes with an Indian to have a child, that's going to produce a Mestizo. So you got this hierarchy developing: Peninsulare, Creole, Mestizo, Indians. Underneath you have blacks, free and enslaved, and then black plus a Creole or Peninsulare produces a mulatto. The point that I'm trying to get is that this is a hierarchy from top to bottom, the race relations. A couple of things to mention about this, though, is that oftentimes you could move up or down this ladder here based on how much money you made. So if you're rich, you would be bumped up. If you were poor, you could be bumped down. So it's not cut and dry. It's a very fluid racial categories. The point is limpieza de sangre. You want to prove not only that you are legitimate, meaning that you're not a bastard child, but that you are a Christian and you have been a Christian for many generations. 5 ideally. Now oftentimes the husband and wife are not actually married at all when they have the child. And so the child is born out of wedlock. That person, it has dirty blood and cannot achieve any of those high-ranking, high-good jobs. Unless, of course, the mom and the dad later get married, then, no matter when they do it, the child will then receive honor. Honor is important. Then that person will be honorable, and they can get those jobs that they have always wanted. Now, oftentimes, especially during the later period when the government of Spain needed money, you can apply to receive honor by paying a certain amount of money. That's going to be called the cédula de gracias al sacar. When you apply and say, listen, my parents were weren't married when I was born, and my parents were going to get married, but then something happened and they died, but here's a couple of $1,000. Do you think I could become honorable? Sure thing. With enough money, anything is possible. And then you get your honor granted to you. And then everything will be changed, of course, in the records and everything. Race is important. Now, in order to describe this, I got a bunch of images that'll help. Here's the website that these come from. But let's go through them real quick. You don't really need to know these at all. But the point is that you need to know the very complex nature of race relations. It's not skin deep. It is a whole mixture of all sorts of things. A Spaniard and an Indian produces a Mestizo. Here's a great story I was reading about a Mestizo. It's a fictional account, but it still makes a point. Henry, though, caught the glint of white-hot anger in the monk's eyes as he straightened, the man's face settling back to passive disinterest. But Henry knew better. A few words of faint praise were not going to satisfy this man as they had Philip. Closer to him now, Henry noted some Indian features, mixed with his Spanish heritage, a deeper complexion, a slightly wider nose, and eyes so deep brown they seemed almost black. Friar Otero was clearly a mestizo, a half-breed, a mixture of Spanish and Indian blood. Such men had hard lives here in South America, their mixed blood often a mark of humiliation and ridicule. Otero reached over with his free hand and ripped off the silver crucifix. He tossed it behind him. The abbot was a fool, he snarled at them. Like you, all of this talk of touching the mind of God, pious crap. He never understood the gold's true potential. Which is what? Henry asked, stepping beside Maggie. To make me rich. For years I have endured the abbot's superior airs, as he promoted others of pure Spanish blood above me. With this gold I will no longer be half Indian, half Spanish. I will no longer have to bow my head and play the role of the lowly mestizo. I will be reborn a new man. Otero's eyes shone brightly with this dream. Henry moved nearer. And who do you think you'll become? Otero leveled his pistol at Henry. Someone everyone respects. A rich man, he laughed harshly and pulled the trigger. Alright, so it's just a fictional account, but it describes the stigma mestizos have. They're not white, they're lowly. They're lower down in that scale. Spaniard and a Mestiza produces a Castiza. Spaniard and a Castiza produces a Spaniard. Mestizo and an Indian makes a Coyote. Black and a Spaniard makes a Mulatto. Mulatto and a Spaniard makes a Morisco. Spaniard and a Morisca makes an Albino. Spaniard and an Albino makes a Black returns backwards. Black and an Indian makes a Wolf. Wolf and Indian makes a Zambaiga. Zambaigo and Indian makes Albarazado. Albarazada and an Indian makes a Chamizo. Chamizo and an Indian makes a Cambuja. Albarrado and Indian, Cachimboreta is born. Indian and a Cambuja, Wolf returns backwards is born. Wolf returns backwards and an Indian makes a Hold yourself in midair. I like that one. What's the point? Ha ha! The point is that race is not skin deep. It's very complex. It's a mixture of the color of your skin, your heritage of how long you've been Christian, how much money you have. It's not skin deep. Now, I always think it's interesting. In Brazil, it's a great example. Instead of saying, are you this color or this color, why don't you tell us what color you are? So what color you are? For the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. Some of these seem to appear kind of funny, but you know, alva, pure white. Avarenta, shadow in the water. Some of these. Over here, branca, white. Branca melada, honey-toned. Bronze, bronzeada. Here's a very common one, cafe, coffee-colored. But you can imagine, cafe con leche. You put a little bit of milk in your coffee, a little bit lighter skin. Castaña escura, dark cashew-like. Or chocolate, chocolate brown. Even more, milky-colored, pink. Cor firma, no doubt about it. I'm not sure what color that is, actually. Loira clara, pale blonde, meio branca, mid-white, mulata, very common, white and black, negra, negro, black. Here's one, Polaka, Polish features, or prostitute colored, whatever that is. Quasi negra, almost black. Here, Huso is Russian looking. Sarara, Turva, Vermelha, all sorts of different colors. Race is skin deep. No, it's not. It's not skin deep. It's a whole bunch of different things to make it more than just the color of your skin. It's very interesting. All right then, let's finish up this section then by talking about culture, literature of the colonial period. And I want to emphasize this to make note that, listen, culture, literature was very advanced and interesting. And I wish we had so much more time to discuss, without boring you to death, some of the great literature. The most famous of all poets was Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. Sor, referring to the fact that she's a nun, sister. And she wrote a ton. She wrote some great poems. I like this poem. I thought I'd read it. Ah, stupid men, unreasonable, in blaming woman's nature, oblivious that your acts incite the very faults you censure. Which has the greater sin when burned by the same lawless fever? She, who is amorously deceived, or he, the sly deceiver? Or which deserves the sterner blame, though each will be a sinner? She who becomes a whore for pay, or he who pays to win her? As you can imagine, people are going to have to think. Here's another poem by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. This afternoon, my dear, when I spoke with you, in your countenance and in your acts I saw that with words I could not persuade you. So I desired that you see into my heart, and love, which aided my intent, overcame that which seemed impossible, since amidst the tears that sadness unleashed, my heart, undone, dropped within me. Enough then of harshness, my dear, enough. Neither torment yourself more with these tyrannous doubts, nor let vile distress oppose your peace of mind. With foolish shadows or vain evidence, since already in flowing humor you saw and held my helpless heart between your hands. Alright, that will conclude this section here, with the emphasis way down here. Scroll it and go back to this one, that I meant to bring that literature was very advanced in the colonial period. And as you read this section in your chapter, pay attention to the literature. We talk a lot about the literature of this period in Europe, in North America, but we fail to realize the advanced nature of Latin American literature. And it is very interesting and detailed. One of the problems, though, is that a lot of it is still in Spanish. And most people in North America don't speak Spanish. Whereas a lot of the literature from North America was written in English, or from England was written in English, and it's much easier for us to read it and understand it.